Jashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Virinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Virinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Virinda Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Parashaya Bhutalisham Te Bhakti Vikasa Swami Namine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, reading from Canto 3, Chapter 14, Text 1 through 4. Śrī Śukadeva Gosvāmī niśamya kauṣāraviṇā upavarṇitāṁ hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ punaḥ sah papraccha tam udyata-añjaliḥ na cha ati-tṛptaḥ viduraḥ dhṛta-vrataḥ. Śrī Śuka uvāca niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir papraccha my bad, sorry. Punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir na cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ na cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ. Śrī Śukadeva niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
hareḥ kathām kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
punaḥ papraccha udyata-añjaliḥ
papraccha
cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ śrī Śukadeva niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ hareḥ kathām kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir
papraccha
cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ.
ati-tṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ.
Please repeat.
Śrī
Śrī Śukadeva niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ punaḥ papraccha न cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ.
Śrī Śukadeva
Śrī Śuka uvāca
niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir
punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir
न cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ
न cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ.
Śrī Śukadeva
Śrī Śukadeva
niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
punaḥ papracchatam udyatāñjalir
punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir
न cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ
न cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ. Śrī Śuka uvāca niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ
punaḥ papraccha udyatāñjalir
punaḥ papracchatam udyatāñjalir
न cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ.
न cātitṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ.
Mataji's. Śrī Śukadeva
Śrī Śuka uvāca
Śrī Śukadeva Gosvāmī said,
Śrī Śukadeva Gosvāmī said,
niśamya,
niśamya
after hearing,
after hearing
kauṣāraviṇā
kauṣāraviṇā
by the sage Maitreya,
by the sage Maitreya
upavarṇitām
upavarṇitām
described, hareḥ
hareḥ
of the personality of Godhead,
of the personality of Godhead
kathāṁ
kathām
narrations, kāraṇa
kāraṇa
for the reason of lifting the earth,
the reason of the
sūkara-ātmanaḥ
sūkara-ātmanaḥ
of the boar incarnation,
of the boar incarnation.
punaḥ
punaḥ
again,
again
saha
saha
he,
he
papraccha
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 inquired, tam
tam
from him Maitreya,
from him Maitreya
udyata-añjaliḥ
udyata-añjaliḥ
with folded hands,
with folded hands.
na
Na
never,
never.
cha
cha
also,
Also
ati-tṛptaḥ
ati-tṛptaḥ
very much satisfied,
very much satisfied.
viduraḥ
Viduraḥ
vidura, dhṛta-vrataḥ
dhṛta-vrataḥ
taken to a vow.
taken to a vow.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Śukadeva Gosvāmī said, after hearing from the great sage Maitreya about the Lord's incarnation as Varāha, Vidura, who had taken a vow, begged him with folded hands to please narrate further transcendental activities of the Lord, since he, Vidura, did not yet feel satisfied. So I'll just go through the Sanskrit Translation and purports for the next 3 verses. Viduro uvāca tenaiva tu muni shreshta harina yajna murtina adi daityo hiranyaksho hatta ityanu shushruma. Sri Vidura said, O chief amongst the great sages, I have heard by disciplic succession that Hiranyaksha, the original demon, was slain by the same form of sacrifices, the personality of Godhead, Lord Boar. Purport. As referred to previously, the boar incarnation was manifested in 2 millenniums, namely Swayambhuv Manu, Swayambhuv and Chakshusha. In both millenniums, there was a boar incarnation of the Lord, but in the Swayambhuv millennium, he lifted the earth from within the water of the universe, whereas in the Chakshusha millennium, he killed the first demon, Hiranyaksha. In the Swayambhuv millennium, he assumed the color white, and in the Chakshusha millennium, he assumed the color red. Vidura had already read about one of them, and he proposed to hear about the other. 2 different boar incarnations described are the one Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 3. Tasyacho dhṛta-vrataḥ kshaoning Tasyacho dhṛta-vrataḥ kshaoning sadhangstra-gena lilaya daityarajasya chapraman kasmadhitarabhun martaha. What was the reason, O Brahmana, for the fight between the demon king and Lord Boar, while the Lord was lifting the earth as his pastime? Text 4. Shattathanaya bhaktaya bruhitajjanma vistaram rishena tripyati mana param kautuhalang hime. Translation. My mind has become very inquisitive, and therefore I am not satisfied with hearing the narration of the Lord's appearance. Please therefore speak more and more to a devotee who is faithful. Purport. One who is actually faithful and inquisitive is qualified to hear the transcendental pastime of the Lord, transcendental pastimes of the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vidura was a suitable candidate to receive such transcendental messages. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnana-anjana Shalakaya Chakshura-militam Yena Tasmai Śrī Gurave Namaha Śrī Chaitanya Manobishtam Stahapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamahyam Dadati Shvapadantikam Vandeham Śrī Guru Śrī Atahparakamalam Śrī Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Śrī Rupam Sagrajatam Zahaganaraganatam Vitam Tam Zajivam Sarvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Śrī Radha Krishna Padan Sahaganalalita Śrī Vashankam Vitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Chikatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Rate Vrindavaneshwari Varsha Bhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasuntuye Vicha Patitanam Pavne Pyo Vaishnavi Pyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swamini Namane Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Tirish Tarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Śrī Śukadeva niśamya kauṣāraviṇopavarṇitāṁ hareḥ kathāṁ kāraṇa-sūkarātmanaḥ punaḥ papraccha udyata-añjaliḥ ati-tṛpto viduro dhṛta-vrataḥ. Śukadeva Gosvāmī said, after hearing from the great sage Maitreya about the Lord's incarnation as Varāha, Vidura, who had taken a vow, begged him with folded hands to please narrate further transcendental activities of the Lord, since he, Vidura, did not feel satisfied. So, we're seeing that Vidura is very much relishing Krishna Katha. Coming into devotional service, or just in general, one thing I've really been realizing is how much we engage in conversation about absolutely nothing, that has like no tangible benefit to the people listening, to the people who engage in it. I mean, it's just prajop, and I excel at it, unfortunately. It's mundane sound vibration. Whereas we see here that people who have this level of piety, this attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they relish these pastimes, they relish hearing about this, because it is very pleasing. And of course, I believe this was Śrī Prabhu who was just making this point yesterday. People who aren't actually attracted to hearing the pastimes of the Lord, we can understand that they are amongst the less pious individuals. So, of course, in speech or in conversation, of course, we have that discourse, the sound is there, and you also have the person who's on the receiving end, the hearer. And the amazing thing about the transcendental sound vibration is that by speaking about this, one is not, both the hearer and one who is speaking is also benefited, which is quite amazing and inconceivable. The all auspicious nature of devotional service and of Krishna, especially the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So again, we see that this mundane sound vibration is described specifically, I believe it's a little later in the third canto when Lord Kapila is breaking down the fundamentals of the material nature. It's described that from agitation of the ego in the mode of ignorance comes sound. And from sound, we understand that the entire material existence comes about. In this connection, you can pull up Bhagavatam, Canto 3, 26, text 32, forgive me, sorry. Tamasascha vikurvanad, bhagavad viryajoditat, shabdamatram abhutasman, nabhashotram tu shadbhagam. When egoism and ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound come the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. You can scroll down to the purport, it has some amazing points. It appears from this verse that all objects of our sense gratification are the products of egoism and ignorance. It is understood from this verse that by agitation of the element of egoism in ignorance, the first thing produced was sound, which is the subtle form of ether. It is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and that by sound one can also dissolve this material existence. Anavratif Shabdat means liberation by sound. The entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. The particular sound capable of doing this is the transcendental vibration of Hare Krishna. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Now we must purify that sound in spiritual understanding. There is sound in the spiritual world also. If we approach that sound, then our spiritual life begins, and the other requirements for spiritual advancement can be supplied. We have to understand very clearly that sound is the beginning of the creation of all material objects of our sense gratification. Similarly, if sound is purified, our spiritual necessities also are produced from sound. So it's quite amazing, because, again, it's described how the material existence comes about, and everything that we perceive within it is a result of sound, specifically coming from the mode of ignorance. And of course, by hearing that which is not able to liberate us, we become further entangled and bound within the material world. We just heard in, maybe I heard it, I wish I should have wrote down the reference for this in this lecture, but basically level of attachment that we have to this mundane sound vibration, there's a correlation, of course, to how much, I guess, taste you could say we could relish. It's taste we can have in devotional service as well. In that we can expect this is what it was in the 8 things to be avoided. We just heard this in brahmachari class, that this excessive curiosity, using that curiosity in the material sphere will not increase our taste for hearing in devotional service. So it's something, of course, that we had to be very careful of. I remember when I first moved in, it was Ali, you asked me this, if I was still listening to Karmi music, and this is like a couple months in, and I was like, yeah, I am. Because I was driving to university. It's like it was really hitting me, because I would listen to lectures, but I was like, it was so hard to like give up all these playlists I was making. Because I would make one for the season, then I would make one for every month, and then I would have some for a mood. And it's like there's so much taste you're trying to just like churn, out of like your experiences in the material world. And it's like, and I could play this playlist, and I know I'm just gonna feel this. I can play this playlist and it'll take me back to this memory I might have had. And I had such an attachment to that. And there's no ultimate benefit that comes from it, even though it feels like we're getting so much taste out of it, which is really, it was a hard thing for me to give up. Even though you're in the association of devotees, it's like that development of taste it can very much be obstructed by this attachment to, and it's not just music. We've seen it with other people who come through. We've had people who come through, they're attached to sports. This also just speaks to the layers of Maya. You have people who watch sports, and you have people who watch people who talk about sports, and then they talk about those people who talk about sports. And then you have people who watch people watching sports, commentating on other people who watch and talk about sports. And it's absolutely like, it's really like amazing. You look at like the layers and just like, what are, like, it's so much prajalpa, and just multiplies and multiplies on itself. Śrī Śukadeva Prabhu was making this point, and I don't remember who's I think it was your class. He was saying just like, karmis can find, like, they just try to find so much to talk about, and they just go on and on and on and on. It's amazing, of course, like you come into devotional service, but then I look back and it's like, hell, I was doing the same thing. But what taste is there really? Of course, because we're trying to churn out so much enjoyment of mundane subject matter, and it feels like it's engagement, or like it's engaging. And that taste that's there, however, of course, we can understand it's temporary. Chewing the chewed, doing so many of the same things that we've been doing before, and then trying to find enjoyment out of seeing other people do the same things also. So in this connection, if you just scroll a little bit down, furthermore in the purport, here we are. Start at the top. Here it is said that from sound the ether became manifested, and that the air became manifested from ether. How the ethereal sky comes from sound, how the air comes from sky, and how fire comes from air will be explained later on. But sound is the cause of the sky, and sky is the cause of strotram, the ear. The ear is the first sense for receiving knowledge. One must give oral reception to any knowledge one wants to receive, either material or spiritual. Therefore, strotram is very important. The Vedic knowledge is called shruti. Knowledge has to be received by hearing. By hearing only can we have access to either material or spiritual enjoyment. In Ali Krishna Prabhu's class, he was mentioning how at the end of every pastime that we read in the Bhagavatam, there's this palashruti, this fruit of hearing. And in some pastimes, the palashruti might be some seemingly great material benediction. And we can understand that these are there to attract one to hearing, but of course it shouldn't be the end goal of actually hearing these pastimes. The pure devotees are relishing this not for the sake of actually benefiting themselves, but because there's just so much enjoyment in hearing the pastimes of the Lord. And it's not on par at all with that in the material world. We see, interestingly enough, what really sticks out, if you read in the first text for today, or I guess the beginning text for this chapter 14, it stated that Vidura did not feel satisfied, even after just having heard the narration of this pastime. So how exactly is it that the devotees are always relishing the holy name, which is non-different from pastimes, form, activities, the abode of the Lord, and yet here we have Vidura saying that he did not, or it's stated that Vidura did not feel satisfied from hearing this. Another term, I guess we could say, not just that he wasn't satisfied, but the devotees have an insatiable desire for hearing. We also see that generally this word is like used to describe, it can be like one's appetite, insatiable appetite, or insatiable lust, indicating that this intense desire and hankering, that of which cannot be satisfied in full. For example, we have this verse, I'm going to ask you to pull this one up actually, it's 7:9:45, Bhagavatam 7:9:45. I'm still learning this one, so I don't know the remaining lines, so I'll have to read from here. Kandu yanena karayori vadufka dukam tarpyanti neha karpana bahu dufka baja kandu tivam manasajim vishahet dhṛta-vrataḥ. So sex life, which all the materialists are very much hankering after, is the topmost enjoyment in the material realm, is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Grihamatis, so-called grihastas who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although actually it is a source of distress. The kirpanas, the fools who are just the opposite of brahmanas, are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are dhṛta, however, who are sober and tolerate this itching, are not subjected to the sufferings of fools and rascals. So we see that this intense desire for this satisfaction by, of course, unity of the senses with the sense objects. We see that also the materialists aren't satisfied at all in their endeavors for this. And it's not just, of course, the act itself that is not satisfying. I mean, it's not satisfying, and so therefore they also have to search for pleasure in speaking about it and planning for it and arranging for it. Of course, we understand that this attraction between man and woman is a basic principle that of which the whole material manifestation runs off of, and everything around that can more or less somehow be traced to that. Now, if you go to the purport I wanted to read another verse in this connection. This specifically on the various topics that outside of sex, okay, this isn't enough. So now we also have to create so many stories and arrangements for this as well. You could go to Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 2. Śrī Śukadeva Gosvāmī starts really hard. He goes in really hard on such people. Shrotavyadi nirajendra niranam shanti sahasrashaha apashyatam atma tattvam griheshu grihamedhinam. In the purport, specifically the second paragraph, you can scroll down. I think you might. Is this the second paragraph? Okay, yeah, I guess so. Sorry. The process of going back home, back to Godhead, is to hear about the Supreme Lord in his name, form, attributes, pastimes, paraphernalia, and variegatedness. Foolish people do not know this. They want to hear something about the name, form, etc., of everything temporary, and they do not know how to utilize this propensity of hearing for the ultimate good. Excuse me. Misguided as they are, they also create some false literatures about the name, form, attributes, etc., of the ultimate truth. One should not therefore become a grihamedi simply to exist for envying others. One should become a real householder in terms of the scriptural injunctions. So Of course, this attraction is very strong. Yet, by setting up so much to satisfy that desire, we always find so much disappointment as well. Versus, again, the Lord's pastimes, because of the fact that they're eternal, this satisfaction that which one is seeking after can be fulfilled without issue, because the Lord's pastimes are eternal, and therefore they're always going on. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur specifically warns about the dangers of attempting to relish these. Sorry, I wish I had this. I had it on my laptop, which I didn't bring. The attempts to relish these mundane mellows, if you will, in the material world. So I'll read. There was a couple of very nice pieces that were in here. Prakrita chestate bhai kabu rasa haina, jadiya prakrita rasa shrutha bhakta gaina. O brothers, no material efforts can ever produce the awakening or rasa, factual transcendental mellows. The pure devotees of the Lord never sings the glories of any mundane mellows that are born of the dual material world. So again, we can't have this side-by-side attempt to advance in devotional service and then simultaneously maintain this attraction to this mundane sound vibration. Where was this from? Prakrita Rasa Sata Jasani. It's 100 warnings against mundane mellows. I could cast on the screen, maybe that's easier. Okay. All right. There's a couple other ones that I'd written down that were very nice in this connection. This is the first. There's a invocation. It's the second, actually. It's the second one. And then the next two, I can just send them to you later because they're not numbered on this file number. Oh, okay, sorry. Jada Rasa Kabu. Let's see, where is this one? Next time I'm gonna make sure I like copy and paste from here so I don't have to scroll. But this, do you know this by any chance? Jada Rasu Kabu Shreya Keha Labhana Krishnaka Prakrita Boli Bhakta Gaina. By singing the glories of worldly relationships born of mundane mellows, no one has ever attained benefit in their spiritual life. The genuine devotee never proclaims that the Lord's incarnations are mundane, or is mundane. This is a big thing too. The understanding is that we follow the rules and regulations of devotional service to facilitate the cultivation of attachment, love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But of course, the philosophy is so important as well. And having that firm situation, being firmly situated and understanding the nature of the Supreme Lord and His energies, because otherwise we have this mistake of thinking by trying to relish prematurely the Lord's pastimes, then thinking that we can also find the same exact taste in that mundane sex attraction between men and women. So it's dangerous, and it has to be avoided. There was one last verse I was going to read from here. It begins Rupa Grihe Lila. Yeah, I should. If I find it, I'll come back to that maybe if I can find it. So anyways, main point I'm trying to drive home is that these mundane mellows are nowhere on the same platform of the Lord's pastimes. And if you see, of course, understanding that the name is the Lord's holy name, His form, His pastimes, His abode, His qualities, all being on the same platform, just by also hearing about the Supreme Lord. Simultaneously, we see that by seeing also Krishna's devotees they're also not satiated just by seeing him. And this is described. You can pull up Canto 1, chapter 11, text 25. This is when Krishna is returning home. He's returning to Dwarka. You can just go down to the translation. The inhabitants of Dwarka were regularly accustomed to look upon the reservoir of all beauty, the infallible Lord, yet they were never satiated. When the ladies of Dwarka got up on the roofs of their palaces, they never thought that they had previously many times seen the beautiful body of the infallible Lord. This indicates that they had no satiation in desiring to see the Lord. Anything material seen for a number of times ultimately becomes unattractive by the law of satiation. The law of satiation acts materially, but there is no scope for it in the spiritual realm. The word infallible is significant here because although the Lord has mercifully descended on earth, he is still infallible. The living entities are fallible because when they come in contact with the material world, they lack their spiritual identity, and thus the body materially obtained becomes subjected to the birth, growth, transformation, situation, deterioration, and annihilation under the laws of nature. But the Lord's body is not like that. So there you have it. Ultimately, the law of satiation doesn't act within the material sphere. And for this reason, the devotees of the Lord are able to derive ever-increasing bliss and pleasure from hearing. So this is such a huge point. And of course, I described that this can be obstructed by not hearing, by hearing things other than the Lord's pastimes, or just hearing these mundane aspects and things of the material world. Whether it's sports, music, news, also is another big thing for people. But if you go back, I want you to go back to Canto 3, chapter 26. Not text 32, but 33. There's a little bit from the purport I wanted to read. Just specifically, it elaborates a little bit more on this liberation. Well, I'll read the translation as well, forgive me. Persons who are learned and who have true knowledge define sound as that which conveys the idea of an object, indicates the presence of a speaker, screened from our view, and constitutes a subtle form of ether. It is very clear herein that as soon as we speak of hearing, there must be a speaker. Without a speaker, there is no question of hearing. Therefore, the Vedic knowledge, which is known as Shruti, or that which is received by hearing, is also called apurusha. Apurusha means not spoken by any person materially created. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hrida. The sound of Brahman or Veda was first impregnated into the heart of Lord Brahma, the original learned man, Adi Kavaye. How did he become learned? Whenever there is learning, there must be a speaker in the process of hearing. But Brahma was the first created being. Who spoke to him? Since no one was there, who was the spiritual master to give knowledge? He was the only living creature. Therefore, the Vedic knowledge was imparted within his heart by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was seated within everyone as Paramatma. Vedic knowledge is understood to be spoken by the Supreme Lord, and therefore it is free from the defects of material understanding, whereas material understanding is defective. If we hear something from a conditioned soul, it is full of defects. Therefore, all material and mundane information is tainted by illusion, error, cheating, and imperfection of the senses. Because Vedic knowledge was imparted by the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to material creation, it is perfect. So there we have it, perfect knowledge. And of course, we understand that the way that this perfect knowledge is protected, the system, of course, is through parampara. And ironically, I think this point was made that a lot of the time when parampara is explained to somebody initially, the argument might be made that, well, you're just blindly following, or you're just accepting what the previous person said. It's like, yes, and that's the perfection of the system. But simultaneously, people can make that point. But then on the flip side, when you look at their philosophy and their scientific theories and whatnot, they're also looking at their past acharyas, you could say, and they're trying to expand on that, maybe in a different direction and claim it as their own, but they're also still trying to take knowledge from another source. So it's not all just coming from them. So you contrast, I guess, this, of course, the Guru Parampara, which is this perfect system we have versus, for example, well, I guess perfect system for learning, we could say, versus the system of like worldly education. The whole idea of learning the material sphere is that well, first of all, the educators themselves who are speaking this knowledge and or giving this knowledge are generally the least qualified themselves. I mean, I remember going to classes. It's like, okay, so it's 2022, and my teacher starts a slideshow, and it says 2000. So that's a 20-year-old lecture. Like, it's 20-year-old PowerPoint that hasn't changed at all, you know. It's and they're reading like verbatim, you know, just like what's on there. And of course, you could try to sit here and say, well, I mean, you're saying that the knowledge that's being passed on by Guru Parampara isn't changing. But the thing is, like, these people are using these resources and they're explaining so-called knowledge, and generally they're not even so conversant about it themselves. They're learning as they're teaching you, actually. At least I've seen, like, with some teachers, they're not well versed in it. And more than anything, another point I wanted to make is that this idea of, I guess, not perfecting, but advancement. This idea of advancement, especially in the material world, is, you could say, supported by change, the element of change. Of course, we understand that with the progress of, well, we think that with time, generally in the material sphere, that means progress, but we see that, of course, especially in Kali Yuga, that one of the symptoms is the progress is actually just further degradation. But this worldly education is generally like they'll teach you some theory, and maybe if they do have the time to, if they do put in some effort to like what they're teaching, they might teach you a new theory because the whole idea is that the one that they previously taught you was bogus, and not, or if not bogus, it had its defects, and oh, it doesn't apply to this sphere, it's not so good. So, but we have something better now, and then the same thing is going to keep on happening as it already has. They come up with new theories to try to fix the holes that were in the previous one. So what am I getting at ultimately? We see that the parampara, the knowledge that we're getting, specifically through the acharyas, it also increasingly gets better, but it gets better with the realizations that the acharyas have and they bestow to the disciples, and as the line continues. So this change or change, so to speak, is expansions, but it's on the exact same point. There's no like deviation. It's not like we're going in a different direction because we found a better like means of progress. It's always holding true. It's always the same. Whereas material like education is like it's here and then it's there. Wait, no, this is wrong. Now we have to go this way. So there's no real idea of what is progress in this learning system. And this is, of course, what most people, however, are hearing all from the time they're like 5, all throughout, you know, the university and whatnot. So just learning nonsense. So, whereas if we look, again, the Lord's pastimes and the acharyas, what they give us, what Prabhupada gave us especially, just so much in these purports to break down and help us understand and give us proper teaching. This is real learning, this is real knowledge. Of course, it's the beauty of this. Now, if we look at today's verses, so Sri Vidura said, he says in the second text, O chief amongst the sages, I have heard by disciplic succession that Hiranyaksha, the original demon, was slain by the same form of sacrifices, the personality of Godhead, Lord Boar. If we just look for a second at the qualifications of Vidura, he's asking questions not just like for the sake of I'm just going to put forward some questions so I can sound intelligent. This is what generally you'll see a lot of people do. I joined a philosophy club for some time and I quickly left because it seems like people just wanted to ask a question and say something to sound smart. without actually arriving at anything like tangible, beyond that. That's just a side point. But essentially, it's not just playing a game of 21 questions for the hell of it. These are actually useful inquiries. If you go to, sorry to have you jumping around so much. If you go to Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 5, we hear the glories of Krishna Katha specifically here. Munaya sadhu prishtoham bhavadbhir lokamangalam yat-dhṛta-vrataḥ Krishna samprashno yenatma suprasidati. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. So, again, we see Vidura has this perfect understanding, and he's putting forward these questions to one, of course, Maitreya, who is qualified to also give answers to that as well. We also bring this up just because this thought came up now that we had this brahmachari class, and Vishnu Prabhu made the point. He just spoke on it briefly, but towards the end, we were talking a little bit about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In one of the first, I don't know if this was the first lecture that he gave on the Bhagavatam, but I know that he told me there's this book, or it's a lecture that I think got turned into a book. Let me see. It's Bhagavat, the philosophy, I believe it's like the philosophy and the ethics that are present in that. I'm trying to think, what was the whole point with that? Because we remember during Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, was it his appearance day that we recently just had? No, it was a disappearance day. When we had a festival, anyways, and we were reading from that book. We were all sitting. We were reading from Sharanagati, or singing the bhajans and prayers that were present in there. Of course, we see that he's lamenting for all the years he spent in this worldly education, in the pursuit of material opulence. Of course, we understand he's a pure devotee, and this is all pastime, but he's making the point of how much time he spent hearing ultimately about this nonsense, and then as a result of that, not having the proper aim in life. In this same lecture, he also speaks more specifically on how the lack of appreciation that he had, and a lot of other Indians at the time, because of this indoctrination from this Christian school that they were going to. It was in a larger point he was trying to make, that because Christians have a certain perspective, they'll never be able to appreciate Vaishnava philosophy, and so as a result of that, because they were also given knowledge by the school they're teaching them all these Christian texts, and of course there was a level of appreciation that he expressed for Christianity, but he also made the point that from that came so much pessimism towards Vaishnava texts that they weren't able to relish until they matured a little bit in their age, and then of course came across Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's literature ultimately. So why am I saying this? The point is you have to hear, again, you see that Vidura is hearing from Maitreya, he's qualified to speak on this, and simultaneously, even with Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we can see in that same principle being present in his pastimes, that I guess you could say he exhibited the pastime of not being able to appreciate Vaishnava texts initially as a result of this influence from Christianity, because he's hearing it from people who are, as he described, useless critics, ultimately. We have to hear this with it's said that one should submit themselves before the Guru like a fool and be like a blank board, so you can absorb everything that the Guru says. You can't come in with these existing preconceptions and ideas and then expect to be able to relish what's actually coming from the Guru's mouth. No, you have to be submissive in your hearing. And as a result of that, then one can start to understand. One can start to relish. They can get the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's representative. But that can never happen if we're not willing to give up our attachment, not just to mundane things like this mundane rasa that we might find in other engagements, but also our existing conceptions and ideas as well. So, again, Vidura is not just inquiring from the proper person, he's inquiring on the proper subject matter, and he's doing so with, as it's described here in text 4, that he's doing this, he's asking, please therefore speak where was it? I'm sorry, it's in the first text, that after hearing from the great sage Maitreya about the Lord's incarnation as Varāha, Vidura, who had taken a vow, begged him with folded hands to please narrate further transcendental activities of the Lord, since he, Vidura, did not yet feel satisfied. So this very submissive mood is so important, is so key. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur further makes his point in just the beginning of Sharanagati. Daina is the first step of surrender. Because if that doesn't come about, then everything else is useless. So it's so crucial. And of course, it's beyond just asking the right questions, and you also have one has to have the desire to hear, of course, as well. And it has to be strong. Because as a result of that, even if you're still hearing the right thing from the right person, then you could still also simultaneously not gain any benefit, because this material contamination is very much strong, and there's not even a desire to actually give it up. This is one of Rupa Goswami's prayers. It's also in Brahmacharya and Krishna consciousness. Kama dinam katina kadita palita dharnideshas. Tesham jata maina karuna natrapa no pashantihi. Utsri jaitan atayutupade sambharatam laptabhutis. Tlamaya taf sharanam abhayam mamna yungshatma dasye. That although I have rendered so much service unto lust and unto my senses, they've shown me no mercy. They've left me shameless, nor have I even cultivated any sort of desire to give these things up. If one goes on in devotional service without actually trying to give up these things, then we see that the perfect process can still yield imperfect results. And it's not on the process, it's on us. So, of course, we hear that when we first take the devotional service, we can feel like so much taste and a flood of mercy generally when in the beginning. The kirtans are amazing, the prasadam's amazing, everything just seems amazing. And then at some point you have to start pushing more and more and more and more. It's that mercy doesn't really come so easily. And of course, mercy, it's not that mercy just comes in the form of like actually, oh, I'm relishing this, or like I can directly see this enjoyable. Mercy, of course, comes in the form of difficulties as well to help us absolve whatever anarthas that we might have that are obstructing the cultivation of bhakti also. And that takes some vision to see. Something I'm realizing I don't have. The minute I face any difficulty, it's what's going on? What happened? Well, I mean, where's the bliss, you could say? This is improper. Because, again, higher than just trying to gratify our senses is understanding that real pleasure comes from gratifying Krishna's. So, this is key. And another hard aspect in that connection, of course, is not just, we hear relishing the Lord's pastimes as among subject matters that are like, I guess, of course, hearing from Guru Sadhu Shastra, this is all on the same platform. This is all Shabda Brahman. It elevates, it lifts one, it clears up this material contamination. But the Lord's pastimes, it's easier to hear. It's a lot more palatable than hearing about our position in the material world and our anarthas and all the things that we have to give up, and actually realizing what it means to try to strive for the highest thing, and realizing how far we actually are from that. That's a hell of a lot harder to hear. But still, it's necessary. Because if we never actually understand our conditioning or our position, then we can't rise out of it. So, then again, we see the role of the Guru to cut down these anarthas, to reveal to us just how we can actually rise above our conditioning. So anyways, we're fortunate, and excuse me, didn't expect that. I can at least personally say I'm really lucky for being directly under those devotees who are properly situated, because they revealed those things to us, and it's never from a position of ultimately of trying to hurt an individual, but we understand that everything the Guru says and the Shiksha Guru is representative, is also beneficial for us in our spiritual life, even if it's not the most palatable to hear. So anyways, I personally don't have much taste for hearing the Lord's pastimes, but at least there's trust in the process, and for that, I'm pretty grateful. So there's a couple, just one more verse I guess I could read, specifically on the perfection of this knowledge and the sources from which it comes. If you go to Gita chapter 9, text 14, excuse me, drink some water so I can speak properly. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhṛta-vrataḥ namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. You learning this verse? Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, and bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with the devotion. So you can scroll down a little bit. It's really nice purport. Goodness gracious. I'm really sorry. I think I've cried like twice in devotional service, and the second time is in front of everybody, so that's really awesome. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the Personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He's always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising his holy name, his eternal form, his transcendental qualities, and his uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, this is what we're striving to attain, and we can do that if we hear properly and from the proper sources. So I'm going to go ahead and end my class there. Open up for any questions, comments, chastisements, if there are any.
That's on that one, right? Okay. Just some nice verses that you're displaying there, the particular Shashatadushani, mentioning the point that one can, well, that's there in the Ishopanishad too, that one has to be able to, it's not that, you have motive, there's knowledge and ignorance can go side by side. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the proper effect. So hearing, attraction for hearing, for Krishna consciousness naturally means no attraction for material sound vibration, whether it's in the form of music, movies, videos, internet, whatever it may be. So sometimes we have a tendency, because of the way that we grow up in society, to make certain things okay. Just like sometimes we may spend all our time on the internet and think, oh yeah, well, what's the problem? Not specifically watching a movie or doing anything of that sort, but it actually is a waste of time because we're associating with the materialist.
Yeah.
And although we know that philosophically, if you actually somehow or other we tend to kind of convince ourselves otherwise. So it's interesting just kind of analyzing our own situations. And we're attached to it and we're not willing to let go of it. Although by letting go of it does mean coming to the platform of pure devotional service. So it's just interesting how Maya is able to capture us. It's a nice lecture by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj called Maya Enters Like a Needle, Comes Out Like an Elephant. Very nice lecture. And so sometimes I'm noticing that more and more in Krishna consciousness. Little things, small things. It's a little late. It's not exactly, it's clean, but it's not completely clean. You did this, but you didn't exactly do it right, but you did it anyway. So yeah, you did it, but so noticing how important it is to actually be conscious of all of those things and how they all add up in our lives. And I'm noticing that I think it's 10 years now, I'm almost from trying to practice Krishna consciousness, just messed it up. 10 years of just messing up. It's like this. And then, hopefully it's not like that for the next 30 years, we pray. Hopefully we're around for the next 30 years. But yeah, you kind of notice you waste a lot of time in life sometimes just because you're attached to material things. And if you just let go of it some time ago, just avoid so much trouble in your life. But we're attached to certain things and ideas, and our existence is of a particular type, and it's really hard to change.
Yeah.
But unless we change those things, we can't. It's very difficult to stay in a particular platform of devotional service that we would ideally like to be at, because it's hard. It's it requires everything in your whole existence to change, because sometimes we're not meant to be situated in. Actually, most of us are not meant to be situated in the way we are sometimes in the renounced order of life. So it takes a lot of struggle and a lot of hardship to bring us to the point of actually being able to relish Krishna's name and form. Because one thing I was noticing that, when you read the Bhagavatam, you hear, just the emphasis is here, hear the holy name, chant the holy name, hear the holy name, chant the holy name. And then we just have no taste for it at all. We can't wait to finish our rounds. We can't wait for the Bhagavatam class to be done.
It's like, no, I can
We
do
can't
like
wait for we can't wait for the lecture to end.
When's prasad?
When's prasad? Well, when can I get on my phone? Not when's prasad. It's like, when can I get on my phone? When can I start talking about something else? So you notice it when you over time you're like, oh, I don't have any taste at all. Yeah. Anyways, nonetheless, the remedy is to keep hearing and keep chanting.
That's all you can do. Yeah. So true. Yeah. Anyways, I guess to that point is sometimes it can feel like it's like weeks are going by. I haven't been here long at all. It's just I know, at least in the beginning, it's gosh, what's changing? But at least, I know, for me, at least I can say, one motivating factor, I guess, is hell. I'm still here, so if I could just do one more day, even devotional service, and just keep on pushing on, and that the ability to even have the option that we have to, I guess not option, but the opportunity that we have to even hear how fortunate are we, you know, to be in such a situation? So, yeah. Sometimes I hit points. I'm just like one more day, just one more day, just one more day, just one more day. But they keep on passing. And stay on the process, and hopefully we'll get closer. We know we'll get closer because it works. So that's one thing that I take a lot of shelter in, at least. So yeah, all true things. Anybody else? Mataji's. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai.